Hey everybody, welcome. My name is Grant Fritchie. I'm the Microsoft Data Platform MVP and Evangelist for Redgate Software. Really excited to have you here for our DevOps webinar, and I see no reason not to get started. Today we've got DevOps guys joining us. Steve Thair is going to be doing the training. He's the CTO of the UK-based DevOps consultancy called DevOpsGuys. Steve's got 25 years of IT experience.
Thanks, Grant.
Hey, not a problem. I'm on 30, I think, but
wow.
I'm old, but I started late, so let's see. He's been working for top government and corporate organizations in Australia and the UK, including BNP Paribas, Vodafone, and Credit Suisse. Prior to co-founding DevOpsGuys, Steve was a web operations manager for Total Jobs and was responsible for running their online job board platform. And he's also a Microsoft Regional Director, one of 150 advocates worldwide, chosen because of their deep knowledge they have on Microsoft products, services, and solutions. Welcome, 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 and thanks for doing this with us.
Oh, thanks for having me. I'm really looking forward to it.
Not a problem. So before I hand it all over to Steve and let him run, I want you to know that you guys are on mute for the webinar, but we can take questions during the thing as we go. Just use the question pane on the control panel there in the webinar options, so you can hook into there. We are recording the session, and we will publish this after the webinar along with the Q&A. So basically, Steve, take it away, do what you want.
Fantastic.
I will interrupt you if a question seems really, really important. Otherwise, we'll just hold them off until the end.
Great stuff. Thanks, Grant. And welcome everybody to this this webinar on how to get started with DevOps. So I've got to whiz through a lot of material today. I want to try and leave some time at the end for questions. I've got 82 slides to get through, so there's a slide every 30 seconds. Right, that's the agenda. We're going to do a quick recap of the DevOps 101 webinar that was held a couple of months ago, just to make sure everybody's on the same page. Then we're going to talk about nine little hashtags, 9 little ways that you can get started with DevOps. There might even be a sneaky 10th way in there as well, and then we'll finish off with about 10 minutes of Q&A. Right, DevOps in 4 slides in 2 minutes. Right, DevOps. At its lowest possible level, DevOps is a set of patterns, practices, and behaviors that is correlated with high-performing IT teams. There's been a lot of research into what a high-performing IT team is, and what they've seen is that they can start to extract this best practice on how these teams work. And we're talking, this is the Amazons, the Etsy's, the Googles, the Netflixes, all of these people who are the poster child for DevOps. And really, the stuff that we talk about in the DevOps handbook, stuff we talk about the Phoenix project, all of the things that we see have really been extracted for how these top performing IT teams are working. DevOps has also kind of been called Agile plus. It's kind of Agile plus continuous integration plus test automation plus release automation that sums up into continuous delivery. And now what we're doing is we're bringing in the operability stuff, the BOFH side of the house that I come from, and it's all of the ilities, maintainability, scalability, deployability, supportability, all of those things that we historically have cared around from an operations point of view, but haven't always been as of importance to the development side of the house. And we're trying to bring dev and ops together in a way that benefits everybody. So it's great. So DevOps, continuous delivery plus operations, operability, bringing those two together. But what's happened is that DevOps has actually broadened out as we've been talking about it. And it's broadened out from just this focus on continuous delivery of satisfying the customer through early delivery, continuous delivery of valuable software. So just think about customer satisfaction and value. Just keep those two things in mind. But what we've done is come on to this idea of the CALMS model of DevOps. And CALMS, culture, automation, lean, measurement, sharing. These are the pillars on which your DevOps transformation is being built. And DevOps transformation is being more and more linked with digital transformation as organizations try and embrace digital sales channels, digital marketing channels. They try and take feedback from their customers, via social media, via the Internet of Things. All of these things that are happening out there in the real world are, forcing us to change the way our organizations work. If you change the way the organizations work, you need to change the way IT works. And CALMS is a way of making us look just beyond that very narrow focus on automation that we see in a lot of DevOps related presentations. Most DevOps presentations will start with the definition of saying that DevOps is all about culture, and then they'll spend 42 minutes of the presentation talking about automation. Today we're going to be talking a lot more about culture and lean and measurement and sharing them. We're actually going to be talking about automation. But we are going to talk about automation, so don't panic just yet. All right, so how to get started in DevOps. Before we come into our 9 things, this is the bonus 10th thing, the idea of systems thinking. This is straight out of Gene Kim, one of the co-authors of the Phoenix Project and the DevOps Handbook. He talks about the first way of DevOps. This is systems thinking. It's absolutely crucial that you start with this. You've got to start thinking big picture. You've got to start thinking holistically. And that just comes down to language. In most places I've worked in IT, we talk about IT and the business like they're 2 completely separate things. Over here is IT and over here is the business. And that immediately sets up a wall and a barrier between IT and the business, which is not a good place to start. It sets up a very defensive relationship, a very supplier oriented, you're a cost center, you guys are useless, you're just expensive, blah, blah, blah. So we need to have a think about the language that we use when we're talking about the rest of the business. And then on the next scale down, we've always had this conversation about dev and ops. With this barrier in between, it's this wall of confusion that exists between dev and ops. So the first challenge of DevOps in this way of systems thinking is to start thinking about these as all part of a whole, okay? Ops and dev and IT and the business all part of one whole, because what's really important at the end of the day is this focus on the customer experience and increasingly with social awareness and corporate social responsibility, we've also got to be aware of the society in which the customer exists. We've got to make sure that we're being green, we've got to make sure we're doing all of those good things to be a good corporate citizen inside society, not just narrowly satisfying the needs of the consumer. So when you're thinking systems thinking, it's about caring what that person at the next desk from you is doing. If you're a DBA, caring about what the dev's doing, caring about what the ops is doing. If you're the IT team, caring about that next IT team over there, caring about what marketing's doing, caring about what finance are doing, caring about ultimately what you're delivering to the customer. Because at the end of the day, the customer experience is crucial to us being successful as an organization. Okay, so we go down from business to department to team to you, and what we then see is we start to work our way back up, the behaviors that you exhibit in your job every day about being open to feedback, about being open to new ideas, about seeking collaboration, about sharing what you know, about being willing to mentor people. They're really key things. And then at a team level, we start to talk about procedures, in departments, policies, and at the top level of an organization, we have the organization's values. And all of this really is shorthand, it's come together, is really what we talk about when we talk about culture in the CALMS model. Culture really just means the way things are done around here. A really simple example of that, when it's somebody's birthday in your company, do they bring in donuts? Do you go to lunch, or do you just act like that doesn't happen? Or when somebody leaves, do you have a big leaving ceremony? Do you get them a card? Do you get them a card and a gift? Do you get them a card and a gift and go for drinks? All of these things, are different types of culture, and we'll talk a little bit more about some of the 3 types of culture later on. But it isn't an easy transformation when you start on this DevOps roadmap, when you're starting on this idea of systems thinking, because it affects everything that goes on inside your organization. you know, the way your organization is structured, the way that you're focused on projects or focused on products, whether you're waterfall or whether you're doing iterative and agile methods, which we're going to talk about later on as well. And, you know, particularly of interest for the people who are interested in automation, how much are we going to shift from manual to automated? Okay, so systems thinking, foundational, right at the background. Always keep that in mind. Always be seeking the big picture. Local optimizations lead to global failures. Okay, let's talk about 3 things we can do to build the foundation and that everybody can do at that behavioral level, at that individual level, without any input from anybody else. There's 3 things that you can start actually doing in your day-to-day work. And those 3 things are: make work visible, measure what's important, and act on the feedback. Okay, making work visible. For a lot of you that are working in agile organizations, you'd have seen something like this. Well, it's arguable whether you'd call this Kanban board or a Scrum board, but it's an idea of you have a section and I'm going to put my work up and the workflow is visible to everybody. I'm going to see what's going on. It's really visible. Anybody can come along at any time. And this is so absolutely crucial to getting started with DevOps. Make your work visible so people know what you're doing. Okay? This is a Gantt chart. This is not making work visible. This is making a plan visible. And there's a big difference between making work visible and making a plan visible. Tracking a plan just is a commitment to achieve the outcomes of the plan. It's not a commitment to achieve what's important to those customers and deliver that customer value that we were talking about earlier. So if you've got any Gantt charts up on the wall, just go and rip them down. They're a complete waste of time in order to achieve real benefit to the customer, because very, very quickly when you're focused on the progress left to right on a Gantt chart, you are focused on delivery of the project regardless of whether the actual need and goals of that project have changed or should change. What we really want to see is work in progress. We want to see a Kanban board. We want to see who's doing what, when, where, and how, what's in dev, what's ready for code review, what's in QA. You know, fantastic kind of, there's a huge amount of information which is available on a Kanban board. We'll talk a little bit more about Kanban boards in a minute. So, okay. What's the simplest possible Kanban board that you can have? Well, best, simplest version is a 4-column Kanban board. To do, that's just your undifferentiated backlog. Hopefully it's fairly well formed. The tickets or the user stories have got sufficient level of detail, but the real trick is when you move it into the ready column, I've got everything I need to do to take that ticket off the thing and move it over into the in progress column to get started working on it. This is what I'm doing right now. Fantastic. So stop bugging me for status updates and go and have a look at the board, and it'll be done when it's done, because I'm really focusing on completing work in progress. I'm not going to stop everything and drop it unless I'm in an operations and there's a higher priority incident, in which case it might have to go back to ready whilst I deal with that incident, but I'm really focusing on getting work done. And eventually it's done. Signed off by everyone, everybody's happy, it's done. We've had a definition of done. Really important step in your DevOps journey or any journey is to write a good definition of done that everybody agrees with. And really to make this a Kanban board, what we should have is work in progress limits across the top. Not necessary to do them immediately, but the idea of a work in progress limit would say in that column, I'm going to have 2 things in that work in progress column, maybe 3 things at absolute most. And if I've hit that limit, I'm not going to do any more. I am not going to start another task until one of those tickets gets moved to the done column. And ideally, you're looking for this idea of one-piece flow. I do one thing, I finish it, I get it done, I move it into the done column. I pull the next thing. So I'm not pushing stuff from left to right, I'm pulling stuff from right to left. Okay? Very simple thing that you can start doing right now. You can go and get some sticky tape and some post-it notes and make this happen for you in your office today. What else can you do? You can measure what's important. Now, measurement has a really, really bad name. because most times measurement is done in order to make sure that you guys are doing what you're doing because you're all lazy and you're never going to work unless somebody's beating you and measuring you. That's a very old school management style, what's called a McGregor type X, if you want to go and have a look in literature. Very much command and control is what we're trying to move away from. But measurement in and of itself is not a bad thing. You can't know whether you're getting any better unless you've measured where you are and the incremental steps that you're making forward to get better. So as you progress from Manly down to Beardley. So in a DevOps world, there are 4 commonly cited metrics that are used in the, particularly presented in the Puppet State of DevOps report, and they are deployment frequency, mean time to recover, change failure rate, and lead time. So, you know, if you're going to measure any 4, that's probably a really good place to start because that enables you to benchmark what you're doing against these other organizations. I mean, these are fairly easy to measure. Deployment frequency, yeah, how frequently do you release? Daily, hourly, minutely, monthly, quarterly. Mean time to recover from when you're notified to an incident till an incident's resolved. Bang, job done. Change failure rate. When you deploy something to production, how often does it screw up? Fairly easy to measure that as well. Lead time and process time are metrics from lean thinking. Lead time is really from start to finish, from when a user story was put into the backlog through to when it was actually released into production would be the overall lead time. You can also have lead times on any individual thing that you have, but within a lead time you have a wait time and you have a process time. And normally, you know, you'll find that they're somewhere in the region of at 10 to 1 at a minimum. You know, it might only take you 10 minutes to actually, you know, deploy that index or make that firewall change, but somebody's had to wait 3 weeks for you to be to get around to doing it. So, you know, what we're really trying to do is, as we move towards this idea of one-piece flow and optimizing the flow of work, again, which we'll talk about in more detail in a few minutes, we're really trying to let's get those wait times down. You know, let's focusing on the wait time will give you a bigger improvement than focusing on the process time. Efficiency can be a little bit of a red herring. But if you're going to do 4 metrics, you might want to start with those 4. Little thing to remember, I'm just saying measure it. I'm not saying make it a target. Okay? So Goodhart's law, you can have a look at that on Wikipedia. Basically, the minute you make a target for it, then and you, particularly if you then align a bonus or some kind of incentive to it, people will start to game the metric. You know, they'll start to do all sorts of things in order to make that that metric look good, regardless of whether it's actually achieving the outcome that you were hoping for. And my corollary to that, if the measurement can't be used to improve the system via the feedback loop, then it's useless. Don't bother measuring it. It's a waste of time. Unless it's telling you something about the performance of the end-to-end holistic system or your part of the system, and it can be fed back in via your retrospectives, via your continuous improvement, then there's not a lot of point in even measuring it. So whilst we're quickly talking about metrics, there are basically 3 types of metrics. There's the metrics that the customer satisfaction, that the customer really cares about. Then at the point where you interface with the customer, you have capability metrics, okay? So as the customer's demanding services from you, what's your capability to meet that customer demand? How well are you doing it at that point where you are actually producing the good or producing the service? And then sitting behind each one of those capabilities is a whole set of process metrics. So customer satisfaction, what measures to them? Capability, how are you meeting that demand? And process, individual metrics about how well that process stream might actually be performing and how you can improve and optimize that. So for example,
I've got one question here. They want to know what is cycle time?
Well, okay, so cycle time, let me go back. Sorry, lead time, sorry, I use them interchangeably. Lead time and cycle time, let's just call them the same thing for the purposes of this discussion. So I apologize, I'm probably using them interchangeably. So for the purposes of this conversation, we'll call lead time and cycle time the same thing. Okay, there's a lot of argument about exactly what these measures. Cycle time's actually the inverse, but that's a long discussion. So customer need, we want features delivered quickly. We want a percentage of features delivered as agreed. Capability metric might be this average lead time. How long on average does it take us to turn a feature around? That is a good measure of the capability that we currently have. Process metrics that might sit behind that might be something like the availability of test environments, because test environments might be a bottleneck to my deployment. Percentage of rework, so how many bugs have I found and how much time am I spending rework. I might also be interested in metrics like about how much am I spending on my cloud hosting to host these test environments. They're process metrics. Customer doesn't care about those metrics, but we might care about them in order so that we can see to optimize them. How can I automate the deployment of my test environments so that they're available, and I also get the added benefit that I can turn those environments off and save money on my cloud hosting spend. Okay, some metrics examples. So I've got these great metrics, and I might have these wonderful sort of dashboards that we see, but I've got to act on this feedback. I've got to do something actionable about this. So Gene Kim's 3 ways of DevOps. The second way is to amplify feedback loops. I'm trying to take this information that I've got and I'm trying to make it actionable and do something with it. So, we want to involve everybody in that feedback process. And here's a hint for those people on the dev side of the house, invite operations people into retrospectives, into the sprint planning, into the backlog grouping. Give them the opportunity to give you feedback on how this application is running in production, and they might be able to give you some input, these operability requirements, all of those ilities that we talked about earlier, about how to actually design the system so that it's more maintainable, that it's more stable, and it's better. So first thing is reach out, start to collaborate, get everybody involved in the feedback process. And that might be, doing some nice big whiteboard sessions and stuff like that. But there's some really quick, practical ways that you can act on feedback. Ensure operability requirements have as equal weight as functional requirements. They're not, operability requirements used to be called non-functional requirements, often treated as second-class citizens because nobody's in there championing them. All you're doing is increasing the technical debt. Using GitHub, for example, using pull requests and code reviews. Super quick, super effective, great feedback loop, really great for the younger developers as well. We got lots of interns in it and grads in at DevOpsGuys. They get a huge amount of value out of getting immediate feedback on what they're doing. Have these regular retrospectives, create those tickets immediately in your retro, don't just write them down. Make sure that you get a ticket for them, make sure those tickets get pulled into the next sprint and act on them as quickly as possible. The sooner you get the feedback, the sooner you're going to improve your process. Track technical debt. There's lots of really good articles on ways of tracking technical debt. The one I really like is this idea of having a debt ceiling. Once assign a really easy measure for technical debt, let's just rate technical debt on a scale of 1 to 5 or something. Once everybody agrees communally that technical debt's got to 4, stop down tools until you pay some of that technical debt and get yourself back down to a 2 or a 1 again, and then keep going. You cannot let technical debt accumulate. In some of the large enterprise organizations that we work in, this is the biggest problem that we see, is this accumulation of technical debt. Eventually, it's like walking in quicksand, walking in mud, walking in treacle. You just can't get anything done. So really important, great way to act on feedback is to track technical debt and reserve 20% of your effort for process improvement. There's some really nice visual ways of doing this. Oh, that's not good. Hold on momentarily.
while you're typing,
Yep,
there is a
I'm
question. Can we have code reviews just by going to dev machines directly instead of having a pull request?
Yeah, I mean, anything that gives you feedback. I would say that yeah, go and sit next, do a bit of pair programming. I really like pair programming between developers. I really like pair programming between devs and QA. The only thing I would say is that it doesn't give you a sort of a trail to be able to go back and have a look at and say, oh, you know, what did we discuss about that? What did we make better? And it doesn't give you any way of sort of aggregating up to say, actually, we seem to be making this mistake a lot. Maybe we can do some training. So if you are going to do that, I would just have some little way of tracking. These are the things we think that are keeping up in code reviews, because that's another feedback mechanism. Yeah. Cool.
I've got one more. I'd left this one off earlier. I was going to hold it off till the end, but
See my screen, by the way.
Yes. Oh, yeah. It's up.
Okay, it's up.
Do you advocate a physical board display, or is a computer tool like TFS good enough to show work?
I advocate strongly for both, for two reasons. One is that we work with distributed teams, so a physical board isn't enough. But conversely, actually trying to have a meaningful meeting if you're doing stand-ups, or again, making this work visible if somebody comes in, to not have a physical board is also not good enough. So I like the combination of both. We just tend to have a little index card. We put the JIRA number or the TFS work item number on it, you know, a 2 or 3 sentence description of what that card represents, and then all the detail that sits behind it in TFS or JIRA or Trello or whatever it is your tool of choice.
Right.
Hopefully that answers the question.
Yep. Thanks.
Okay. Right. Simple visual thing to also track technical debt is this idea of a waste snake. So you go there and you put little, draw your little snake, don't make it too big, and you know, every time you have an indication of something you think's a waste or an inefficiency, something that you want to improve based on the feedback, you go and stick something on the waste snake. By the time you get to the head of the snake, at that point in time, actually, we really need to do something about this now. You know, so these are actually estimated in hours, so there's probably, you know, 30 or 40 hours worth of work on that waste snake. Okay, now you're going to do a sprint that's going to focus on paying back the waste snake. Great little, very visual way of keeping track of waste and technical debt. Okay, so just, you know, related to that and you know, about some of these measurements and metrics, in a Toyota factory, part of their lean thinking is this idea of the and-on cord. That's the little cord you see on the board there. The and-on cord basically stops the entire production line. Not just stops your workstation, it stops the entire production line. So how many times a day, the typical Toyota manufacturing plant, that's, you know, producing about 2,000 cars a day, so one every minute or so, do you think that and-on cord is pulled? And the answer is it's pulled 3,500 times a day. So they pull the cord more than they, you know, nearly twice as much as they produce cars. So what I'm saying is that you can, and so when that cord gets pulled, the supervisor rushes over to where the problem is, and he says, thank you. He says, thank you for your commitment to quality by pulling that cord. And thank you for giving me an opportunity to help you. And thank you for giving me the opportunity to learn how we can improve this process in the spirit of Kaizen and continuous improvement, which is a hell of a lot different than in many organizations that we do live in, where you get yelled at if you stop something. So that's a cultural thing, and that's a behavioral thing that comes right back into those behaviors we were talking about on the triangles before. So, you know, the only way, their firm commitment is the only way we can make cars, you know, 2,000 cars a day, or it's even more in the more modern factories, is by this continuous commitment to quality and feedback. A really interesting question then is which I'll leave you with, is should Toyota increase or decrease the number of times the and-on cord is pulled every day? And the reason I make this point is this comes back. You can have a metric that doesn't have a target. You know, you're just tracking it to see where it goes, okay? And is it going up and is it going down? So just be aware of that. All right, how do you get started in DevOps? Part 2, changing how we work. 3 working practices that we really need to focus on. Identify the goal, be agile, and check how you're doing for time, right? 30 minutes. Identify the goal, be agile, and deliver continuously. Okay, so there are a lot of organizations and IT departments that I've worked in where if you ask the people that work there and you say, well, what are you doing? Like, what are you trying to achieve? What's your target? What's your goal? Where are you going? Where are you heading? They've got absolutely no idea. And that's trying to drive the car blindfolded. You really need to sit down and have a clear understanding. What's your personal goal? What's your team's goal? You know, what's your organization's goal, or what your IT department's, you know, strategy for that year is, and what your organizational strategy is, because that way you can drive alignment on everything that you're doing. Is this helping us? The classic example is McLaren Racing. They just say, does this make the car go faster? And if it doesn't make the car go faster and it can't contribute to making the car go faster, then the question is, why are we doing it? So really key to identify your goals. You know, there's lots of things. We have this idea of a thing called a goal canvas that we use with our customers to do a lot of whiteboarding activities and think about the things that we do. You know, why are you here, and what are your enablers and what are your constraints? And this sort of, you know, comes into the way we do our planning as well. So, you know, a two-year plan that is down to the granularity of days is a complete waste of time. So what we suggest is that you sort of plan in 12 months, then quarters, then months, or 2 sprints if you're doing a sprint-based model, and then 2 weeks for an iteration. And the probability that you're assigning that you're going to achieve to these things gets higher and higher the closer you get to now. So, you know, if it's 2 weeks out in the sprint, I'm confident. I'm 95% sure that I'm going to deliver this. I'm committed. I've broken it down to tasks. I really know what's happening. But, you know, 12 months out, yeah, it's a bit vague. You know, it's aspirational. I'm probably only going to achieve 60% of what I say, not because I'm lazy, not because I'm not good at my job, it's because I'm giving you 40% to change your mind, because I know you're going to change your mind. You know, success is not checking a box, it's having an impact. If you complete everything and nothing gets better, you know, that's not success. Okay, so next one up is about being agile. Fantastic. Watch this guy. He's amazing. This guy, not so much. So being agile, you've got to make sure that you understand your capabilities as well. So what do we talk about when we're being agile? Well, there's lots of different flavors of agile. We're not talking about any particular methodology. You know, Scrum is extremely popular, almost to the point where agile is synonymous with Scrum. It's not. You know, there are a lot of ceremonies that are associated with agile in people's minds. You can see some of them on the screen: planning poker, burn down charts, daily stand-ups. They are also not agile. Okay. The Agile is at the heart of it is the Agile Manifesto. Individuals and interactions over processes and tools. Working software over comprehensive documentation. Customer collaboration over contract negotiation. Responding to change over following a plan. And they go on to say, it's not that we don't value the things on the right, we just put more emphasis on the things on the left. Now, it might be that it's 51% working software and 49% comprehensive documentation. It doesn't mean we don't have to do documentation. Documentation is really important. It's just that we put working software, our focus is on doing working software over comprehensive documentation. So maybe I can do lightweight documentation. Maybe I can just have a really good README in the GitHub repo that tells you the core things that you need to do, and a couple of high-level diagrams to give you the big picture. So we still have to do all the things on the left, sorry, all the things on the right, we just value the stuff on the left more, okay? And at the end of the day, Agile delivers. I mean, you know, this has been tracked in survey after survey, the Standish Group, Chaos Manifesto, State of Agile survey report. You know, there is no doubt that iterative Agile methodologies work. And then we want to talk about continuous delivery. So what's the difference between continuous delivery and Agile? Well, you go right back to the start there. It's about really how am I releasing this to production? You know, what I really want to aim for is to get from my concept, my idea, to cash. This is from Lean Enterprise, from the Appendiacs. Want to shorten that cycle as much as possible, from concept to cash. Now, I might have developed all of that stuff if it's sitting in a repo or Artifactory as a build artifact, and it's waiting to be deployed. You know, that's like cars stuck in a container ship on a dock, not going anywhere. You know, it only delivers value when it's in the hands of the customer. So I'm trying to get that final bit, putting it in the hands of the customer as quickly as possible. And there's lots of benefits to that. You know, when I've got frequent release events, it's smoother, it's a lot less effort, it's a lot less risk. I mean, I worked in organizations, quarterly releases, person years, many person years of effort into each release. From a change but debugging point of view, remember that MTTR, the mean time to recover, mean time to repair metric that I was talking about earlier. If I've got to debug a 3-man years worth of work versus, one feature branch, it's a hell of a lot easier to do this one than the other. And, again, the more I release, the more I'm getting feedback. And now I've put feedback all the way out to the customer. The customer, is the customer using this feature? Is the customer, does this feature actually lead to greater signups or more conversions or more revenue? Or, so now I've taken, the feedback out to its ultimate loop, and now I'm starting to go back. And every release gives me the opportunity to get more feedback in my deployment techniques, my methodologies, my automation, my test automation. Every release, great opportunity to get more feedback. And this is where automation is really, really important. There's lots of good research coming out of the DevOps Research Institute. Jess Humble and Nicole Forsgren did a paper where they took a whole lot of material from the DevOps Puppet DevOps report, did a whole bunch of statistical analysis, came up with these aspects on the left that all feeds into this construct of continuous delivery that leads to lower levels of deployment frames, greater throughput and stability, lower change failure rates, and that also then correlates with higher level of organizational performance, productivity, market share, profitability. So you can tell your business, high-performing companies have high-performing IT, and vice versa. High-performing IT impacts high-performing companies. And the landscape of automation of what you can choose is absolutely huge. I mean, this is the ZBL Labs periodic table of DevOps tooling. I mean, it's where do you want to start? I mean, there's just so many tools that you can work out, but you've got to focus on those ones that are going to give you the best value, the best bang for your buck based upon where your biggest pain point is right now. Focus on the pain. If you were going to start anywhere and you really wanted to be a little bit more prescriptive, this is probably the sequence that we would tend to follow. But if you've got an issue with deployment automation, environment provisioning, and you don't have enough test environments, well, maybe you want to really focus on environment provisioning as your first thing. Build and release stuff's important. Test automation is absolutely crucial. Test automation is the fulcrum upon which everything operates. Okay, pause for some water. How are we doing for time? Right, okay. All right, 20 slides in 3 minutes. Okay, we can do it. Okay, culture, that hidden part of the iceberg. There was a quote from a American CEO, culture eats strategy for breakfast, because at the end of the day, no matter what strategy the management comes up with, unless they align the culture behind it and get everybody pushing forward, then that's not going to happen. So you've got to build trust. You've got to think about aligning your organization and your organizational structures to value, and you've got to be relentlessly focused on optimizing flow. This is the stuff that's at that higher level. You're starting to talk at the team level, and the department level and the organizational level. So depending upon where you are in the organization, you might not be able to directly influence this stuff, but you can definitely enthusiastically participate in it. Okay, building trust. As you can see, if you're going to allow somebody to take a saw to a plank that's on you, you must have a great deal of trust in his ability as a carpenter. Why you don't use the sawhorse directly behind you, I have no idea, but that's okay. It's a great way to build trust. Depending upon your organizational culture, trust and having a generative, performance-oriented culture. From a lot of research into this showing that these organizations are the high performing ones. Great cooperation, risks are shared, failure leads to inquiry. So what happened, what went wrong? Great example at Microsoft when there was the issue with that Amy AI bot they had. Satya Nadella said, hey guys, we made a mistake, don't stop, keep going, we're going to make mistakes, but just keep going forward. It's a great example of a generative culture, performance oriented, where we're interested in learning, we know we're going to make mistakes, but I've got your back. That's such a great message. If you're a team leader, if you're got the responsibilities, you manage teams, the one thing that people want is to know that they've got your back. So, messages are not punished, failure causes inquiry, new ideas are welcome. So then we start to talk about organizational alignment, okay? We're starting to align our organization to value. We're starting to talk about organizational structures. This is this very common idea in DevOps of creating multidisciplinary cross-functional teams that are product-centric. They own a product, they own something from soup to nuts, from inception to retirement. They're responsible, devs are on call, they're responsible for, they've got operations people in the team, they're responsible for managing and support of the application in production, and they might have some support from some platform teams down here that might offer, security as a service, or they might offer monitoring as a service to help support, and maybe there's some teams over there that are helping with a little bit of that first line triaging stuff to make sure that the incident gets routed to the right people. But the idea is that you own a product and you're responsible for it, and you feel a sense of ownership for it. So this is some of the organizational change stuff, and a lot of this organizational stuff is driven by this thinking around what's called the McGregor type why thinking about autonomy, mastery, and purpose. This is what really drives people in organizations. Again, a lot of research about this, but what we're saying is we don't give you carte blanche. We're saying that your autonomy extends to those things that you need to do to achieve the tasks that have been set. So a lot of people say, oh, we got autonomy, I'm going to go do whatever I want. Well, no, the organization still has goals, still has plans, it still has things it wants to achieve. What we're saying is we're going to set you that as a target, or we're going to set you that as an objective, and you're going to understand why, but how you get there, that's up to you. I might want to have something, I've got a lot of experience, I might want to have some input into that, but at the end of the day, we're going to give you autonomy about how to actually achieve that. Last but not least, we're going to talk about optimization of flow. And this idea of laminar flow comes from fluid dynamics. We want to avoid this turbulence that's at the trailing edge of the wing. We're seeking this nice laminar flow. We want a steady flow of work through the pipeline, regular like clockwork. Cadence and rhythm is what we're trying to achieve. Because for too long, all of our organizations have been optimized by role, and it's just handover after handover, and then the boss comes helicoptering over the top and throws in a few more requirements to mess everything up. Poor customers at the end of this long chain, he's not happy, it's very rigid, it doesn't work for anybody. So what we're trying to do is as you saw in that team model, we're reorganizing everything to try and flow. We're trying to take a small, not having this huge wheelbarrow of stuff dumped into the planning process. We're going to take one or two things, we're going to get them through, and we're going to shorten this cycle. We're going to get it down to the customer as quickly as possible, which you can constantly trying to optimize for flow. Reduce handovers, reduce queues, lower the batch size, improve the cycle time or the lead end-to-end lead time. And I think probably just worth mentioning, we look at these things and we can see where there's bottlenecks. We can see that there are some queues longer than others. We need to understand the cycle time and the process time, or at each point in the chain, because any optimization not made at the point of constraint is an illusion. So that's my timer. Okay. What we're looking at is like if I've got this big bottleneck here in development, for example, and I spend all my time hiring a whole bunch more of new service delivery managers, well, all they're going to do is they're going to end up starved of work. Same way if I employ a whole bunch of more BAs, all I'm going to do is create an even bigger bottleneck here in development. So, it's really important to make sure that you understand, this is the systems thinking, the holistic viewpoint, you understand the end-to-end value stream. This is, again, from lean thinking. There's a techniques called value stream mapping that enable you to map all this out and get that big picture. And at the end of the day, throughput is profitable. What you want is that working item in the hand of the customer. Anything that is not at the end of the cycle in the hands of the customer is not generating profit. It's just work in progress and it's costing you money. And, the deployment lead time, or this cycle time, it's really a great predictor of a lot of good practices. If test automation or manual testing, is causing a problem, when we're trying to move to test automation, we can see how that's making things faster. We can use this sort of stuff to detect and correct problems through the monitoring. There's lots of really good things that we get by focusing on cycle time. I mean, classic sort of stats, it's cited in a lot of different places, the number of deployments that Amazon does, but I mean, okay, you've got thousands of teams. It's a microservices architecture. They're doing lots of continuous delivery, but I mean, these are just crazy numbers. But you can have a highly scalable, robust architecture that is being changed incredibly frequently. And if somebody tells you that you can't, they're just wrong. It's not their opinion, it's just empirically wrong. It is not an alt fact. It is just wrong. All right, so in summary, 10 things and 9 stops getting started: make work visible, measure what's important, act on the feedback. They are things that you can get started doing today. Then there's some stuff around your working practices. How do you identify your goals so you know what you're trying to achieve? If you identify the goal, it's much easier to drive alignment. Look at agile delivery methods and then look to extend them, or agile, agile delivery methods, I guess. Then look to deliver continuously to get it out in the hands of your customers. That's kind of team level type stuff. Then, build trust, align to value, and optimize flow. Now you're starting to talk about, how we're working with the product owners, how we're working with the people sort of upstream of us and the people downstream of us. So you start to talk about organizational level stuff, but we always got to keep in mind that systems thinking is the #1 thing that's going to help you on your getting started with DevOps. Thank you. I'm done.
Excellent. I really like that last bit. That was cool. 9 to 10.
Right.
Okay.
10 minutes spare.
So we have a couple of questions.
Sure.
So one of them is asking about stand-ups, and they want to know if they should do this every day twice so they can measure progress.
Every day twice to measure progress. So why? Okay, so I guess the question is why? Are you measuring it so that you can tell your boss that you've made progress so that your boss doesn't yell at you, in which case I would say no? Are you measuring it because the people in your organization, in your team, don't reach out for help when they need it? In which case I'd sort of say maybe as an interim measure until you instill trust inside your team so that they're going to help when they need it. I mean, the only time I've ever done 2 stand-ups a day was when I had 2 geographic locations and we wanted to have a stand-up with the people who were, 6 or 8 hours behind, so we had a bit of a handover at the end of the day. It seems to me like that comes from a command and control method of thinking. If I'm not constantly inspecting the work that's being done, then they're going to slack off and not deliver. So it really comes back to the intent. I think once a day, focusing a stand-up that's focusing on the work, not focusing on the person, not focusing on what you're doing, focusing on the work. Where are we stalled? What's blocked? What's not moving forward? Who's done their ticket with my work in progress limit and is now free to go and help somebody else? That's the kind of stuff that I'd like to see in a daily stand-up.
That makes sense. All right, so then there's a follow-up question, and it's a previous question. Does commit messages tell us what we did and what has been decided? I'm assuming they're talking about TFS commit messages. Is that a way to document what's been done? Was you source control for that kind of thing?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the key practices is getting really good at source control, and that's a real hard step for a lot of the people from an operations point of view. So first of all, getting really good at source control is just like a no-brainer. There has to be this mandatory. I was trying to work out how I could get this into the presentation actually, but it was at a little bit low level than I wanted to get to. There is a trade-off between what you put in the story. So what you put in comments in the code, and I'm a huge fan of comments in the code because they don't cost you very much to type a little comment. I'm a big fan of a commit message that says, what does this commit relate to? What have I changed in this commit so that I know, and what user story does this relate to? I mean, what you're starting to see now is I get my release notes are automatically generated by going in and scanning all the commit messages that relate to everything that's been bundled up in this release package, and then the next level is what am I putting in the Jira ticket or the TFS work item as a comment or a feedback about what it was that I did and what were the decisions that I make. So for me, there's kind of 3 levels there. So code comments, commit messages, and the actual feedback into the Jira ticket or the work item. What you put in all 3, that's a tougher question. But I would say that the commit message, if you are going to move to automatic generation of release notes, should at least, at a minimum, give you a 1-sentence description of what it related to and be linked to a work item ticket so you can go and find more information. Does that make sense? Right.
That works for me. So two people have actually asked, are the slides going to be available as well as the recording? Yes. And the recording's definitely available, everyone. It will be available. And you're going to make the slides available. Cool. Then the next question, that's a hard one. How do you involve the operations team if they're always busy with issues on production?
Yeah, I'm too busy fighting fires in order to get better. Oh God, okay, that might have to be another whole webinar. Look, I know this pain because that's the world that I come from and I live in. I'm too busy fighting fires to get better. I actually wrote a whole blog article on this it's on the DevOpsGuys blog on how to use automation to repay technical debt. So the first thing is that what can you, particularly if you're a developer, what can you do to give these guys some breathing room? Can you help them write a tool or utility or use some Chef and Puppet and Ansible and CloudFormation or whatever your tool of choice is that can give these guys some breathing room? So this comes back to this idea of measurement that you were looking for. What are they spending their time doing? And this is why I know people hate doing timesheets, and I know hate people do do time logging on their work item tickets. But it's so crucial because when it comes to questions like this, well, how do I know where their constraint is if I don't know where you're spending your time? Now, if you're spending all of your time firefighting on one system, are you spending all of your time focusing on scaling out stuff because you've got performance constraints? Are you spending all of your time doing releases because there's no release automation? Are you spending, all of your time manually trying to configure environments and remote desktoping into machine to machine to machine to set a whole bunch of configuration settings that somebody could knock out with a bit of PowerShell DSC in about 20 minutes if they knew what they're talking about? So go and read the article on Automate Your Way Out of Technical Debt on the DevOps Guys blog. That would be my starter. Find where the constraint is, where are they spending all their time, what can you do to automate their way, to give them some breathing room, to free up some time. That would be the sequence of events that I would start with.
Right. Although, I mean, I think you really nailed it at the start with saying, I don't have time to improve. Well, yeah, maybe.
Yeah,
maybe that's the problem right there.
You've got to find some time. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
That's the only solution. I mean, the one, for those of you that have read the Phoenix Project, the one unrealistic thing in the Phoenix Project is that Bill manages to convince them to stop all feature development work for 3 months or 6 months, I think it is.
Right.
There's like a whole complete moratorium. But that said, there are some case studies from some large enterprise organizations. I don't know whether it was Rabobank or ING, and they did that. The CIO and the CTO came down and said, right, we're going to pay back our technical debt. All feature development stops.
Wow.
I'm tired of this stuff. I mean, that's a huge, ballsy move. You've got to have a lot of top cover if you're going to make a call like that. But people are doing it. And then after that 3 months of just focusing on paying back technical debt and doing all of those things, man, then they're off to the races, right. And then, just shot up productivity and release frequency shot up, and mean time to recover went way down and all that sort of stuff, and changed failure rate basically trended to 0. So
right.
Yeah.
And then there's a comment from one, John says, I've previously managed an ops dev team and ultimately found that you need a certain saturation of people to make it work well.
Okay. So we'll
passing on the comment.
Yeah.
All right. I think that's all the questions we have, unless someone wants to put another one in real quick. All right. I don't see anything. Well, that's it. Steve, thank you. That was awesome. I learned stuff that I didn't know I was going to learn, so that was really good.
Fantastic. I'm glad you liked it.
Oh, no, I did. I really liked it. I mean, I love DevOps. I really kind of thought I was on top of it. So the fact that I'm picking up new stuff all the time is great. So anyway, thanks, everybody. We're going to be emailing out the recording. The contact details are up there, so you can get in touch with the DevOps guys after this meeting to follow up. I really appreciate everything you guys did. Thank you guys for coming. And I believe that's the end of this. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, everybody. Bye.